Hello students, welcome to the class on editorial decode, and in this class I will not be dealing with the lead editorial. Rather, I will be dealing with a very important topic related to economics. This is about recent ordinance that the government has brought in with respect to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code Act. Now, first of all, we need to understand the background of this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, why this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was brought in by the government last year? The government brought in this act, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, primarily to protect the banks from the NPAs. Now, in order to understand this protection of the banks from the NPAs, the Insolvency Code, we need to go more in the background to understand this entire aspect, why this is unfolded. So we need to understand the economic scenario that India had witnessed after 2008. Now 2008 was the year when the global economic crisis unfolded. So this was a very important year for the global economy. This was the year when the Lehman Brothers, they filed for the bankruptcy. This was the year when the developed world began to witness the slowdown in the growth rate of their economies. This was also the year in India when India more or less remained unaffected by the downturn winds that were blowing in the economies of the Western countries. So Indian economy remained quite insulated from this downturn scenario that had impacted the European nations. So till 2011, India believed that India will not be affected by this global economic crisis, and the banks also believed the same. Now, because banks, they believed the same, they went on to lend the corporate section of India. Now, the banks were in the belief system that the Indian economy has not been affected, so they were believing that the economy will be witnessing the growth rates, good growth rates, Indian economy, and for that they need to actually garner more profits by lending to the corporate sector. So the lending kept on increasing. But after 2000, this is the important year for India. 2008 is important year for the global economy. 2009 is very important year for the Indian economy. Now this was the year when the Indian economy began to feel the heat of the global economic crisis that unfolded 3 years ago. Now the corporate sector was not ready to pay back the loans that it had taken from the banks. And this had resulted in a stupendous rise in the NPAs, non-performing assets of the banks. Now the banks' NPAs began to rise, and the corporates, they were not ready to lend, they were not ready to pay back their debt, their loan. So the banking system that was inexistent at that point of time during 2011, it did not have the requisite authority and the power to get back their loan from the defaulters, because no law was in existence at that point of time which could support the banks. So in order to provide banks with an authority so that they can get back their loan, the bad debt from the defaulters, by winding off their projects, by once they've declared their insolvency, so that the banks can sell off whatever is remaining with the defaulter. So this was the kind of authority that was conferred on to the banks by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, whenever any defaulter files for the insolvency and the bankruptcy, now what it means? It means when any corporate player feels that his or her project has failed, the corporate venture has failed, and now he or she actually requires the support in the form of declaring insolvency in the bankruptcy, in that case the bank will have the authority to sell his project to someone else who will be, now suppose someone has borrowed 100 CR from the bank, but someone has filed for the bankruptcy. In that case, and the bank need to actually get back its 100 crore, but the project in which one would have invested 100 CR might not be selling at that price. It might sell up at 20 CR or at 30 CR. So the bank will be okay with 20 CR or 30 CR, because presently the NPA is very high. The banks require about 8 lakh crore rupees from such defaulters that are existing in India. तो बहुत लोगों ने पैसा देना है बैंकों का. And because of this insolvency and bankruptcy code, 20, अगर उनको लगता है बैंक को that they can get 20 to 30 CR from the banks, from the defaulter, in that case they will actually be selling it off to a new person, and this new person could not really be new. This new person could also be the defaulter who had not paid the debt, who had not paid the previous debt. So he might regain the hold of the venture that earlier belonged to him only. So in the new scenario, so by this insolvency in the bankruptcy code the government brought in, he could have evaded his liability of paying the debt, and he could have just ended up paying maybe 20% and 30% of his liability, and he could have again become the owner of that company. Now, is it illegal? Is it unethical? Now, this is very important to discuss. Now, at the face it looks to be that it is unethical, but it is also ethical in a way, because the development, the progress, the growth of any corporate setup is dependent, is contingent upon the various policies decided by the government. So somebody is setting up a venture, and if that venture fails, it is not only he who is solely responsible. The responsibility is also lying with the government. The responsibility is also lying with the global economic crisis. The responsibility is also lying with the numerous other factors. So he solely is not responsible for the failure that he has got into or his venture has got into. So in that case, he actually requires the support. He actually requires the second chance. Now this is very important. He actually requires the second chance. But the government of India now, it had brought in new ordinance under section 20A. So they have added this provision, the section 29A, to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act. Now what does this section says? Now this section says somebody who is a willful defaulter, somebody who had not paid the debt in the past, somebody who had a liability of paying some debt to the banks, he or she will not be allowed to enter into a second negotiation process. The second negotiation process here means that he or she will not be allowed to keep hold of the company of whose debt he or she was not able to pay. आपने पहले भी फेल किया है, पहले आपने इतना ज्यादा लोन देना था, अब आपने विलफुल डिफॉल्टर हो गए हो. अगर बैंक अब इसको सेल करने को जा रहा है तो आप उसको दोबारा बाय नहीं कर सकते. So this is what this section is all about. But the critics says that this section is not right. Now according to them, the reason for the failure could not solely lie on the willful defaulter. There could be multiple reasons. He should actually be allowed to revive this project. He should actually be allowed to give the second chance. So this is all about this new ordinance that the government has brought in. Now this ordinance throws light on numerous aspects of the economy, about the dysfunctionality of the corporate sector. Secondly, about the rising NPA of the government, and this also involves the question of ethics. So this was all for the class. You can subscribe to this channel. Name of the channel is Brainy IAS. You can contact us at 84594000000 in case you're interested in joining offline classes or online classes. So this was all for the day. Bye bye. Take care. Have a nice day.